Orange Blue News podcast. Today we've got Doug Bouchon from Orange Blue News, and our featured guest is Joe Henrickson. He of the City Suburban Hoops Report, and he's been all over. I mean, Chicago Sun-Times. He does a little bit of everything. Also a school teacher. How's that school teaching going this year, Joe? It's been a little bit of a struggle.
Like basketball. But basketball is getting going here in Illinois, finally, out of the blue, to be honest with you. I mean, a lot of people, I always felt like there was going to be some semblance, there'd be some kind of a season, whether that would have been a thrown together makeshift 5, 6 weeks, 4 weeks, 15 games, 10 games, 20 games, February or May, or I thought there'd be something, and for this to happen, it did spring on us pretty quickly, and we got games going right now, and I'll be going to my first real game that matters with a true one-loss record that will matter. I'll be at my first game Saturday night.
Wow, it's been a crazy process. My daughter plays her first game Saturday night, so we've kind of been through this. And what kind of went into that? I mean, what did you hear behind the scenes from coaches as they're going through this? And you've also got some coaches that aren't even sure whether they're going to play or when they're going to play at this point too.
Yeah, I mean, it was such a back and forth dramatic thing that was really tough on mostly the kids because, one door would open, another one would shut, and then all the rumors and the social media of this might be played or it might not be played. We may start. That was just go back and forth. And I think it was really hard on the kids to try to get their hopes up and then have them deflated. And so all of that was challenging for them. But the other part of it is, some of the areas that, and I don't want to say what areas and what kids and what people are hit the hardest, but, right now in the inner city, you're dealing with some really hard times. And, those kids have not been in the school at all. They have not been with their basketball teams. And while the door has been open for the large part of the state, the Chicago Public League is still, up in the air. A lot of doubt remains of if they will have basketball as quickly as everybody else is having it. And they got a lot to sort through, starting with the teachers and potential strike. And so there is so much that they are dealing with that I especially feel bad for them.
And you obviously you're kind of you're there on the front lines talking to kids every day, like I am. And what have you seen from the kids that you talk to? You had to have some excitement when they first found out they were going to play, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think with everything, just how we all kind of get used to what is the new norm, even our own lives, and you accept it step by step. And I think in the back of their mind, most everybody played that whole season last year. It really, really was awful for those teams that were in the sectional finals and 3A and 4A, and then the 1A, 2A teams that were ready to play in Peoria. But more or less, 95% of the schools all got their seasons completed. And then it was getting used to not playing. Then it was getting used to, all right, well, we're going to play now, but we're not going to have titles to play for. So I think their excitement and what I hear too, talking with coaches who are obviously in contact with their kids every day, is that camaraderie, that getting back and just competing with your friends. And no, it's not ideal. No, it's not what we signed up for when we entered high school basketball and all the goals that are set with regionals and sectionals and the dream of playing in Peoria. High profile shootouts and playing at the Pontiac Holiday Tournament and all those things. Okay, we kind of accepted, let's make the most of what we got. And that is now playing, whether it be a 12. And I've seen some very aggressive schedules with some high school teams up here. They already got 20 plus games scheduled, which is, then it brings up questions. Are there going to be more injuries? Are there going to be? We'll find all that out. I'm not a doctor or a physical trainer, so I don't know where that'll end up. But they're going to get games. They're going to get practices. They're going to have a good 5, hopefully, fingers crossed. That time that they miss the most, that time in the gym with their classmates, and that gym that they're they've grown up playing in and going to camps in, and they're still going to get that and be able to develop and get back to the roots of the game and the sport and what's most important, which is playing with your friends and being coached and just playing basketball again.
For me, I'm excited to see some of these kids that we haven't seen in almost a year. And we've had some move out of state, but some of these kids we haven't seen play maybe since last March. I know some kids didn't get out on the AAU circuit really, and the AAU circuit wasn't what it was before, obviously. I mean, there wasn't the UIBL or anything last year. So are there any kids that you're excited to see play, that you've kind of said, hey, this is a guy that I want to see how he's developed in the past 10 months?
All of them. I did get out a little bit, not much, and the quality of play, I went to some of the AAU programs that had some high quality scrimmages, like the Illinois Wolves is an example. They do some great things with their program. There's so many Division I kids within the program. So throughout August, September, October, I was going to their workouts and their scrimmages, but it's still not the same. The stuff that you were talking about, some of that AAU stuff, is just not very high quality. It was almost as an eval. I do have a recruiting service that goes out to 100 plus Division I schools and coaches, and so you're trying to evaluate, and you almost feel like you're doing a disservice to the kids by evaluating them based on what they're playing in, and it's tough from the class of 2021 all the way down to 2022. But to get back to your original question, I really want to get out and see the 2022 kids. There are definitely some 2021, the current seniors, who are scholarship worthy, who are maybe Division I, who are unsigned, uncommitted. And I will try to do my best to go see them again, up close and personal, to try to get and promote and pump those kids back up again. But as you guys know, that with all of the changes in college basketball, it's not just about the lack of evaluation. It's a lot to do with, the immediate transfer rule that colleges now, the one-time blanket waiver that you can transfer. And then the other issue is kids all from freshmen through seniors in college can come back for another year of eligibility. So all the college coaches I've been talking to, this is the quietest my phone has been in 20 plus years of doing this, and from the time the college season started till right now. I still talk, but it's nothing like it was before. And a large part of that is because they don't know what their rosters are going to look like for next year, who's coming back. And then the second part of it is we want to leave some spots open because we want transfers. We want the established transfer that we have tape on, that we can go and synergy and watch these things that they can evaluate those kids on and have a good feel for, as opposed to the high school player. So, this Saturday night I'll go watch the number one player in the state, Max Christie. He'll be playing, and Cam Christie, his younger brother, a Division I player in his own right, as well as a really high profile junior, Cam Kraft at Buffalo Grove. So they'll be playing against each other. They both played last January, a year ago, and they both went for 40 plus. So it should be a good one. That'll be my first game that I'll see live. Like I said, since my last game was a sectional game last March, Whitney Young and Simeon. And it's been, 11 plus months since then.
Joe, I think for Brad and I, when guys like us who cover Big Ten teams go out and watch games, we're always looking for that guy who jumps out as a high major prospect. And that's something we really missing the holiday tournaments and all that kind of stuff. And that's like the most fun for me, is seeing a kid that just improves a lot over a year and jumps out at you. Cam Kraft looks like one of those kids to me that if we had seen him this year, and if college coaches had seen him, he'd be on some high major, recruiting board. So talk about his game a little bit. Is he one of those breakout guys, you think?
He had a chance to be. When that season ended, he picked up an offer from Xavier. He's got some other high major interest. He's a shot maker. He plays with a little bit of moxie. He's a confident kid, 6'5", all around scorer, but can really shoot the basketball. He put up huge numbers as a freshman. Body wise, he's just is a slender, very slender, thin kid as a freshman. He's added some weight. But I'm anxious to see him play. Yeah, to answer your question there, he's among the top half dozen, top 6 or 7 prospects in that class of 2022. And, he's on that mid plus, high minus level right now. So again, all these 2022 kids are anxious to be seen because they missed that. I believe that is the most important stretch in recruiting for a particular age, particular kid in high school, is the after their sophomore year, leading up all the way through their junior year. And now we've already missed 80% of that process. So that's tough. So I'm anxious to see the growth and the development of players, because it's unlike any time, that I've ever been through. You would ride that high school season out last March and then jump right into April, May AAU. And then you get to see them again all through June. I see a ton of June basketball with their high school teams up in the Chicago area with all the different shootouts. And then you get back into the July evaluation period. So you've had 4 months there of repeatedly seeing kids and seeing what they did from March through July. And then you pick up again in the winter, but that's all been missed. So I've got to do a lot of or more work as well, just to kind of get caught up and kind of reevaluate. I have a great perception of what I believe these kids were going to be, but they're teenagers, they're high school kids. They change by the month, some for the better, some for the worse. And it takes time when you're covering dozens and dozens and dozens of Division I prospects in the state of Illinois alone, it'll take some time to play catch up a little bit.
One other individual player I wanted to ask you about, and I know you love Jaden Smith from Yorkville. I've read what you wrote about him. One of the best shooters that we've seen in the state of Illinois. Why do you think some of the national analysts have missed the boat on this kid? If you watch his, and we haven't seen him live just because of COVID, but if you watch his highlights, he can light it up. He's a good athlete. He finishes above the rim. But for rivals, he dropped out of the rivals 150. What do you think these scouts are not seeing about Jaden Smith?
Well, I think not seeing him on a regular basis is the big one. I mean, he's a 2022 kid. So, I'm not saying national evaluators don't evaluate young kids, but they don't evaluate them nearly as much as somebody who's a more regional or localized. And, I think that's part of it. To be honest, I've kind of given up on trying to evaluate national rankings for myself. A lot of times there's no rhyme or reason for a guy like E.J. Liddell, as an example. It took forever. A guy like Talon Horton-Tucker, it took forever. Bryce Hopkins is another example. They're all ended up being pretty highly ranked kids and high profile, high majors, but as freshmen and sophomores and going to their junior year, they were still a little bit wait to be seen by the national evaluators. The other thing is Jaden Smith plays in a low profile Class 1A school. He's not traveling around into big shootouts or big events, so he's up against it a little bit there. But you think about it. If he a regular year coming off a big sophomore year, playing with a high Illinois Wolves and Under Armour circuit, he really would have been evaluated closely in April and May of this past year by the national guys. And I think that's where he would kind of locked in and cemented himself as a top 100 player. I love him because of where the game is at in terms of shooting, perimeter shooting, spacing the floor, and they are hard to find. And he's got size and a little hint of athleticism, as you mentioned, to go with that size, but he's as natural, pure of a shooter. I haven't seen one better in all my years of doing it. And that's, Brad knows me pretty well. I'm not into hyperbole, but too much. When it's deserved, I'll go all in. But when I say that, I mean it mechanically sound, pure, elevation, release, everything is it's picture perfect. And, it's going to be a matter now of just being seen a little bit more on a national level.
Do you think, like with Shutt and Kraft, what if you compare and contrast those two guys? I think Shutt has a little bit more bounce, probably a little better shooter, but are they similar type guys though in their styles of play? I
sorry, I missed you the second. You said Kraft?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say Cam is more of a shot maker, scorer. Jaden, not that Jaden isn't, but I mean, Jaden is just this electrifying pure shooter with range. It doesn't matter if you're shooting from, and Kraft has range too. Yeah, they're similar, and they're both shot-making guards, perimeter guys with some size. Jaden definitely is a step quicker, a tad bit more athletic. Foot speed's a little bit better. But yeah, in terms of position and what they do, yeah, they are similar. I just think Jaden's just a little bit higher of a level right now.
I want to ask you about a couple of in-state guys that, obviously those are guys that Illinois is interested in. They've offered shot. They've just started to kind of move on Kraft a little bit, talk to him as coaches. And what about AJ Casey? Obviously, everybody talks about him. And there's another kid who's kind of, I don't know whether he has an Illinois offer, is Kyle Thomas. But what are your thoughts on a couple of those guys? One guy, is 5-star, and one guy's really kind of still going under the radar.
Yeah, Casey's a no-brainer. I was working before this call. I was working on my 2022 update, and he's been the number 1 ranked player out of 8th grade, and he has maintained that. There's red flags, 3 schools, 3 years, Simeon, Tinley Park, Young. If you dive into that and really get to know the reasons why and everything, there's nothing to that. That would cause some concern for some people, but it doesn't me at all. Good kid. He's just a no-brainer high major. With him in particular, his next step is that consistent competitiveness at a high level. And he's got all the tools. He looks the part, 6'2", 6'8", almost like a point forward. Poor man's Jason Tatum. He's not at that level, but that's the type of game he has. But he just has to elevate himself in terms of consistently competitiveness. Kyle is more of he was a project to begin with. Good bloodlines. Obviously, his dad, late Daryl Thomas, played at Indiana and St. Joseph in high school. And he's just a little bit more. He's not a true on the block, back to the basket guys. He's a big man that likes to float around on the outside, perimeter, face up. He's getting, and in fairness to him, he is one player, I would say, in that class, I've gone the longest stretch without having seen play. And that's bad for a kid that's that big. Big men develop slower. So I'm anxious. I'm probably going to see him prep. They play Monday night, a really good fall prep team. But, I think one's a no-brainer high major. Thomas, I think, because of his size, he's intriguing. He's got a ways to go, and still very raw.
Is there one school, I guess Chicago Kenwood, are they a different kind of team now? I mean, what's the kind of a new, possibly a new Chicago power player?
Yeah, on paper, they got two of the top young kids from Morgan Park. Obviously, Mike Irvin's the new coach there. Nick Irvin was the coach at Morgan Park. Mac Irvin Fire. And they probably took, the number 2 or 3 prospect at Simeon. He's there too, Davis Lowry. So, those 3, Darren Ames, Javante Taylor is a number 1 2023 kid in the class. So, Kenwood has the makings. Everybody has envisioned Kenwood as a sleeping giant in the Chicago Public League because of their location, where they're at, some decent academics, in the Hyde Park area. So it has the potential to be a monster. We'll see if that transpires. But, they have a chance to be a new public league power. The old coach, Marlo Finner, did a good job there kind of elevating the program. And they did have some good seasons in the last half decade. But, they are poised to make a huge jump with the talent they have on paper.
Have you had a chance? I know it haven't been basketball in Illinois, but there's been some Illinois kids who maybe transferred out of state to play this year, like Trey Pettigrew or AJ Storr. Have you had a chance to watch any of those guys on whether it's YouTube or television or whatever you can find, Baller TV, whatever might be on? Have you had a chance to watch any of those guys?
They leave the state, they're dead to me. No, I to be honest, I still get calls on those kids. So I do tend to try to at least pay attention. There's a kid from Kankakee who his name's AJ Storr, who left. He's left to go somewhere else. He left again to go somewhere else, and now he's in Arizona. But he had a kind of a breakout, season, what you want to call this season. He's a 6'5" athletic kid who can shoot. Picked up some offers, so he's a kid that really opened my eyes and particularly he had a game on ESPN or ESPNU or that I watched, and he really shined and elevated himself in my eyes. And he would be in Illinois still. He would have made a big vaulted up my rankings. Pettigrew, the biggest name is Jeremy Fears. He was on national TV as well, or ESPN3 that I did watch. He is a top 3 player in that 2023 class, point guard, who's at La Lamura now. I keep an eye on them. But again, my focus, my recruiting service is so locked in on Illinois that's a lot to take care of as well. And, another kid just down your way is Jalen Quinn at Tuscola. I absolutely am a huge fan. Watched a ton of him with the Illinois Wolves and throughout the summer and the fall. And what I liked about him, having seen less of him, I got some film from Coach Bozart at Tuscola I sent me, and I watched that from his sophomore season. But what I love seeing is that first time with the Wolves, and then I watched probably 5-6 more times, his comfort level and confidence just grew immensely. And that was, the I don't want to say the knock because it wasn't his fault, but that level of competition that he plays at Tuscola obviously is not of the variety of you would play in the public league or an EYBL, but watching him compete and play against the multitude of Division I players with the Wolves, I absolutely love him. I think he's going to be a high major, and he's just a big guard who, with his size and strength, that's going to offset a little bit of what people would say maybe he's not a super high major athlete, and he's not, but he can turn the corner with that strength, and his body's going to be big and strong at the end of the day. He's got a good feel, can pass, perimeter shots getting better, needs to continue to make strides, but I think at the end of the day, he will have high major offers, within 4 or 5 months from now.
Yeah, he's another one that probably missing last summer really hurt him. Chance to, really showcase himself against high-level competition, show what he can do. I think because the questions were there about, who are you playing every day? And he's not, we've had other small school guys that have done well, whether it's Myers Leonard, but Myers Leonard was 7 foot tall, and that gives you a little bit of Mike Tisdale, 7 foot tall. That gives you a little bit of a different view
Right.
on the guys. Is it from a standpoint, being in state, talking to a lot of high school coaches and things? What about Illinois recruiting? What are you hearing about Illinois and how they're pursuing recruiting in the pandemic age and how that's going? Have you heard a lot of buzz? Obviously, they're ranked team. The season itself has, been pretty hyped. What are your thoughts on their recruiting?
I just think that there's such a lull in this, Brad, and not just Illinois, but all of them. It's just, I hear it in the kids' voices. I hear or from parents or high school coaches who call, hey, Joe, is this normal? We're not hearing from people, or it's kind of been quiet. And I just think that's been the case for 5-6 months or 4 or 5 months. And, Illinois, I continue to say this, the number one thing Illinois can do is what they're doing right now. And that's putting wins together, playing in games on national TV that matter. And I think the underrated sting of Illinois basketball was that pandemic, because I think they just missed out on so much because they didn't have that previous year in the tournament. They didn't have a run of we've seen what's happened the last 5-6 years at Illinois, and not having that shine, missing out on that Selection Sunday, missing out on that Thursday, Friday NCAA tournament game where the whole state is tuning in, and suddenly the Chicago media takes notice and starts caring again. All of that was missed, and that's not the staff's fault. It's not anyone's fault. but it's reality. And I think that doesn't talked about much, but I think it really, really hurt as far as perception wise, that growing perception. Now they're starting to get it back a little bit. But again, it stinks because they haven't been able to have kids on campus. And can you imagine the Illinois home game against a Big Ten opponent and bringing these kids in there when you're competing for a Big Ten title? That's all lost. And I think it hurts Illinois more because they haven't had the opportunities to be like that for so long. So that's been an underrated part. But, the answer is, they're doing fine. This staff has done more recruiting outside the state of Illinois than any staff in the history of the University of Illinois. And, by far, it's not even close. And they've capitalized on that. You look at that roster. I mean, it is what it is. And they have found a niche that other staffs have not. And to credit them, they don't have to rely on Illinois as much as other staffs tried to rely on Illinois. I think you can win, combination of both ways. There's been a lack of high majors in Illinois, though. I mean, they came in, and this goes back to even, John Gross's years. There were those mega stars that were here in Illinois that Illinois historically has never gotten, and John Gross didn't get. And then but after that, there wasn't this plethora of high majors where you had 8, 9, 10, 11 to pick from. I mean, like as example, the class of 2011 as example, they had 18 high majors in the class of 2011 in Illinois. Illinois in that group, now whether you were happy with them or not, Abrams and Nana Egwu and guys like that, they were able to they missed out on some guys. Chase and Randall is one, but they were able to secure, plan B, plan C. For years with Gross, and now to a degree with Coach Underwood and his staff, they haven't had, that deep or that depth of high major talent. Fortunately, they've had that connection with Morgan Park, and we're able to nab Io and Adam Miller, though.
Is there and I know Illinois coaches are hoping they can make a run here in March and we get to Elite Eight, Final Four, get a lot of publicity, start visits April 15th, be a player in this transfer market, and then the class of 2022 obviously is huge for them. So going forward. Well, hey Joe, I think that's all we have. We've grilled you enough for this podcast, but really appreciate you coming on. I'm really excited about seeing some high school basketball games. It should be fun. So thanks for coming on Orange Blue News Podcast. Joe Henrickson, City Suburban Hoops Report, talking to us about high school basketball. It's the future of AAU. Thanks, Joe.
Hey, thanks guys for having me anytime.